Roya Hakakian is a writer, journalist, a poet, and currently a visiting fellow with the Wilson Center's Middle East program. She joins us to discuss a rising tide of global anti-Semitism. Why now?
Because I think we have been very alarmed in reaction to the most recent war in Gaza, between Gaza and Israel. And I think in addition to that, there are a lot of interesting changes that have come about, as I specifically discussed this afternoon. In Iran, for instance, that we always assume, or at least most recently assume, that anti-Semitism has been on the rise in the Middle East. And the most recent report from Anti-Defamation League says that Iran has gone in the opposite direction. And I think looking into that, given the political circumstances overall in the Middle East and then focused on Iran, gives us some excellent lessons about the region.
That is a fascinating notion. A country that has an official anti-Israel holiday, yes, that has had its leadership deny the Holocaust, yes, that is building a nuclear program that many see as a direct threat to Israel, that supports Hezbollah. It's such a contradiction. How do you explain it?
Whose president officially said that he wishes to wipe Israel off the map of the world. Exactly. So it's a very interesting perspective and a unique one to look at Iran through this perspective, as opposed to the tired one being the nuclear one. I think that it's, for the most part, the people's reaction or disenchantment formulated as doing the exact opposite of what the government is recommending, which is to be anti-Israel.
So it's not just that leadership is out of step with the populace. You think it's a direct rebellion as well?
Absolutely. I think these rebellions in Iran manifest themselves in a variety of ways. I pointed to a report by Timothy Garton Ash about a decade ago in the New York Review of Books, where you assume by looking at the people being veiled, at women being under Islamic uniform, at the regime being the only theocracy running in the world at the moment. Mm-hmm. And you assume that, people's sexualities are extremely repressed, whereas Ash reported that he was being invited to orgies in Tehran, which is incredibly unheard of. And I think with respect to the issue of anti-Semitism, this is also another reaction. When you try to clamp down on sex and sexuality, people rebel by being, hypersexualized. And I think the reaction of people to reject the regime's propaganda against Israel has been the same.
Beyond the big picture, your own personal experience growing up Jewish in Iran, what did you observe on the anecdotal level that informs your research?
One of the best stories I captured in my memoir, which was released 10, 12 years ago.
And well received.
Well received. I say about it that I wasn't executed after it came out, which to me is good news. I recount an episode in high school when bathrooms were segregated for Muslim students and non-Muslim students. And I'm sure in America this reeks of racism. We remember whites-only bathrooms, mm-hmm, and as Americans, and then colored people's bathrooms. And this happened in my lifetime when I was in high school in Iran. But in response, what was astonishing and really moving, especially when I was looking back from the perspective of 20 plus years, the kids in the school didn't abide by the rules. And we crisscrossed between the bathrooms. And as much as the administration and the school officials wanted us to honor the separation, my classmates didn't.
Did they sort of turn the other cheek, or did they attempt to enforce the rules?
They turned the other cheek because they had bigger fish to fry. There were bigger problems. Yeah. Especially in those years, Iran and Iraq were at war, and we had many problems.
So at the start, you suggested that a rise in anti-Semitism is a contextual matter. There are things happening that are creating the circumstances. What would improve the situation? What would need to happen to turn the tide?
I think with respect to Iran, there is one major problem. And that is that you have a population that has become if not friendly towards Israel, it has become very curious about Israel because of the anti-Israeli propaganda of the government. But there's no information, you see. The problem is that the regime has tried to brainwash the young people's minds through the official education, through the media, and the nation has proven to have resisted this. But how can they really satisfy that curiosity and compensate for the lack of knowledge? And I think that's where the rest of the world needs to come in. I think we should jam-pack the airwaves with proper information, proper history, proper knowledge of the Holocaust, which the Iranian president denied several years ago, of why Israel came into being to begin with, and Jewish history in general. All of that has been missing from this debate inside Iran.
Final thought for now, because we will invite you back, and that is, what do you hope to learn here during your time at the Wilson Center? What is the focus of your research? What questions will you try to answer?
I want I want to give everybody a break from the nuclear discussion, because I think it has become an exhausted and useless subject as far as informing.
But it's not going to go away.
Us. It's not going to go away, I know. But I want to at least create another perspective that, in my view, is far more illuminating about what goes on in Iran than anything else. And that's the view of religious minorities, and namely the Jewish community.
Roya, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Thank you.